I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of Calendar 112, H.R. 6, the American Dream and Promise Act. Further, the bill be considered read a third time and passed. Motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Madam President.
The senator from Texas is recognized.
Reserving the right to object. You know, someone watching this at home might think that congressional Democrats, Senate Democrats, want to actually enact amnesty for the so-called DACA recipients. Of course, they could have done so earlier. President Trump offered Senate Democrats a deal that would have granted permanent amnesty for all the DACA recipients, and the Democrats turned it down. They didn't want the deal. They hoped instead to have an issue in November. You know, we're right now at a time of crisis in our country. We've got a global pandemic, and we have 44 million Americans out of work. This is, on the economic side, the greatest crisis our country has seen since the Great Depression. And yet, what we're seeing in the Senate is a continuation of something we've seen for several years, which is that today's Democratic Party doesn't value working men and women, American working men and women. Last week, we saw a decision from the Supreme Court of the United States on amnesty. It was a particularly disgraceful opinion. Unfortunately, it was authored by Chief Justice Roberts. It was joined by the 4 liberals. And it concerned President Obama's illegal amnesty. DACA, when it was issued, was illegal. And actually, for years, President Obama admitted that. When activists asked him, will you decree amnesty unilaterally as an executive, he told them over and over again, I can't do that. I'm bound by federal immigration laws. I am not a king. I am not an emperor. That's what President Obama said repeatedly. But then as the election approached, I guess they reassessed and decided that being a king or emperor sounded pretty good. And so DACA, the day it was issued, is directly contrary to law. Federal immigration law says in the statute books that if you're here illegally, it's illegal for you to stay, to get work permits, and the Obama administration ignored federal immigration law and simply printed what were called work authorizations. My friend from Illinois has a picture of a lovely young lady that he's spoken about. What he doesn't have a picture of is what happened after executive amnesty was granted for those who came illegally as kids, which is that the number of unaccompanied children skyrocketed. The state of Texas, I've been down to the border many, many times. I've visited with the Border Patrol many, many times. You know, you go online and you see cages with children in them. What many of the people online don't tell you is it was the Barack Obama administration that built those cages. And it was executive amnesty that resulted in tens of thousands of little boys and little girls being sent alone with violent drug traffickers, with coyotes. Far too many of those kids were physically assaulted, sexually assaulted. You are not helping children by incentivizing little boys and little girls being in the hands of violent traffickers. That's not humane, and I've seen child after child after child abused by this system, and every time the Democrats offer more amnesty, the predictable result is more children are going to get physically assaulted, sexually assaulted. Amnesty's wrong, and it's also the wrong priority. Today's Democratic Party, their priority is on people here illegally and not on American workers, not on keeping American workers safe. What we should be doing, and in just a moment, I'm going to ask unanimous consent for this body to take up and pass Cates Law. I'm the author of Cates Law in the Senate. Cates Law is common sense legislation named for Kate Steinle. beautiful young woman in California who was murdered on a California pier by an illegal immigrant who had come into this country illegally over and over and over again. He had multiple violent criminal convictions over and over and over again, but our revolving door system kept letting him out. As Kate Steinle died on that California pier, her father held his daughter in his arms, and her last words were, "Daddy, please help me." I've had the opportunity to visit with Kate Steinle's family. What happened to her was wrong. It shouldn't happen. And the reason it happens is because our broken system keeps letting go violent, criminal, illegal aliens. What does Kate's law provide? Common sense legislation that says aggravated felons, people with serious felony convictions who repeatedly enter the country illegally, face a mandatory minimum prison sentence. In other words, we're not going to let them out and allow them to commit murders and rapes and assaults. Not going to let them out to abuse and threaten children. Kate's law is overwhelmingly bipartisan common sense. If you go into the great state of Illinois and ask the voters of Illinois, does Kate's law make sense? Overwhelmingly, they say yes. That's true in every state in the country. By the way, it's true of voters who aren't just Republicans. It's true of Democrats. It's true of independents. It's true of everyone except the 47 elected Democrats in this chamber and their colleagues in the House of Representatives. Because the reason Kate's law is not the law is because every time I've tried to bring it up, the Democrats have objected. If Kate's law had been on the books, Kate Steinle would still be alive. Because the violent criminal who kept coming in over and over and over again illegally would have been in jail instead of murdering that young woman. Amnesty is wrong. Illegal executive amnesty is wrong. And we need to have as our first priority protecting the American workers and keeping the American people safe. I object.
Objection is heard.
Madam President.
Democratic whip is recognized.
Madam President, it was my understanding that the senator from Texas was going to offer a counter consent. Is that correct?
Yes.
I think that was the moment to do it, but if
Madam President.
Senator from Texas.
Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of Kate's law, which is at the desk. I ask unanimous consent that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.